My grandson sold the house I built for him, while I sat in the front room and kept my mouth shut. Before we continue, please subscribe and like the video and tell us in the comments below where are you listening from and what time is it there. The room smelled of furniture polish and fresh lies. The agent's folder flashed bright as a fish's belly, and the pen in McCall's hand looked too heavy for the bones of that boy's wrist. Winter light came through the big bay window I had bent into being with my own clamps and patience 30 years ago. It had a habit of catching dust like glitter. When the pen met paper, all that glitter turned to grit in my throat. "You don't have to watch, Dada," McCall said without looking at me. "People who sell houses know not to look at what they sell." "I'm only here to keep the table steady," I told him, laying my palm flat on beach I'd planed thin as a whisper. That table never wobbled in its life. I did. I raised that house out of a muddy lot the summer after Sarah died. Building kept me from drowning. I worked alone at first, then later with men who learned to square a frame by watching how I breathed. Cyra's favorite color was smoked blue. I painted the front door the shade of the sky right after rain. I said I made it for the family that would outlive me. I said it to an empty kitchen, and the kitchen believed me. Macau used to run toy cars along the baseboards and tell me he'd drive for real one day. I measured his height on the pantry door pencil marks and dates like a ladder climbing toward a life. He was my daughter's boy, the only one who still bothered to ask how my joints felt in monsoon season. When his voice lowered, he asked if I'd ever regret giving it all to him. "Not if you earn it," I said. "A house is earned." I meant hours sweeping sawdust, replacing a hinge, learning how wood moves with weather. He heard only the gift part and skipped the work. Rafi Beg came later. Gold watch, silver tongue, shoes that squeaked like they were practicing lying. He'd show up to the neighborhood with drone shots and phone filters, and a smile that slipped over people like cellophane. Mikhail liked how Rafi called him boss. Rafi liked how Mikhail repeated it back to himself. "It's a seller's winter, Mr. Dar," Rafi told me, hands open, seal slick. "You built a gem. Let the market admire it." "I didn't build it to be admired," I said. "I built it to be lived in." Living looked different to a boy who counted likes in a night and slept light as a page on a screen. The week he told me, he did it over tea. He didn't drink. "I'll put the money into a startup," he said. "You're always telling me to build something." "You're mistaking buying for building," I said. "One is grab, the other is grind." He smiled in that kind way young people do when they think they're comforting the old. "I know you're attached, Dada, but it's just a house." It is a dangerous thing to say to a man who shaped every door jamb with his hands that a house is just a house. I didn't shout. I have never found shouting to strengthen a joint. I touched the pantry door, found the notch where the pencil caught once, printing a crooked date. I said, "If you're going to make a cut, be sure you can't glue it back." Rafi kept the papers ready, like a stagehand holding props. "We'll get you a premium," he told Mikhail. "Investors love a story like this. Legacy. Craftsmanship." "Careful," I said. "Stories bite if you pet them wrong." We had visitors. A couple from the other side of the river who wanted a fireplace that photographed pretty. A developer who measured rooms with a laser and a grimace. A pretty trio of influencers who stood at the bay window and took turns posing like saints of the open concept. They called the pantry charming, as if charm came cheap. I watched their shoes track in faint salt lines from the street. No one looked up at the crown molding long enough to notice the two hidden dovetails that keyed it together. I always hide a pair somewhere. A house deserves a secret. Secrets keep it humble. The last visitor came alone, not a buyer, an investor. He shook my hand with fingers soft and dry as paper. "Beg speaks highly of you," he said. "Of me?" I asked. "Or of my house?" "Of the return," he said, and smiled with only his teeth. Numbers are also a kind of flattery. Mikhail laughed too loudly in the empty kitchen and filmed the echo. He was making content of my life while I tried learning how to downshift grief without stalling. What I noticed in all the noise was this: Rafi didn't know a rabbit from a rabbit, but he knew how to move fast. And moving fast had left him with too many plates spinning at once. He kept checking a message thread labeled partner. The more he called me sir, the more I saw the tremor in his thumb. Weakness in wood or men shows first at the edges. When the offer came, a fat number dressed up in exclamation points and earnest money, Mikhail printed the papers and laid them on my table. He rolled the pen between his fingers like a fishbone he couldn't swallow. "Say the word, and I'll walk," he said. He looked at the camera on the counter, not me. "No," I said. "You should do what you came to do." He blinked. He thought I might beg. "I don't beg in rooms I built." Rafi filled the silence with platitudes. "It's only love if you let it fly, Mr. Dar." "I prefer keeping what I love in the same place," I said. "But I am old-fashioned." He signed, and the page made that crisp sound that money likes. My house did not groan. It had more dignity than me. Outside, winter afternoon leaned toward evening, and the smoke-blue door caught the last light and held it. I thought about all the times I'd come home late from a site, hands ragged, and Syra would have left the porch lamp on. The same bulb hummed now, patient as ever. I realized it would still be humming when I was gone, and the idea made my jaw tighten. Some lights don't know you're not coming back. Rafi shook my hand, and I caught his watch glint. "We'll do right by her," he said, nodding at the house like it was a woman he meant to charm in a week and leave in two. Mikhail clapped me on the back. "Dada, you'll see. This is an upgrade." "I have never met a better door than the first door that opens for you," I said, "but upgrades are the fashion." After they left, I sat alone and listened to the old heating radiators tick like content insects. The house had its own pulse, and tonight it beat out a new rhythm. Sell, sell, sell. I answered under my breath, "Not yet." I don't shout. I measured. A carpenter plans twice, once on paper, once in the palm. I opened my little pocket notebook and began with a drawing. The house as a body, pressure points circled. Not to break, to make it speak. People imagine revenge is a hammer. More often it's a shim, a thin, patient slice of wood that makes the world plumb. I set 3 objectives. First, teach Rafi the cost of speed. Second, expose Mikhail to an audience he did not control. Third, make the house tell the truth about itself so loudly no filter could muffle it. I started with a poster, pinned to the notice board outside the tea shop on the corner. "Farewell T.E. for an old D. Bring your stories." One last time under the blue door. I signed it, Yusuf, because names carry more weight than logos. The neighbors saw it and came in twos. Aunties with bags of cardamom biscuits, kids pulling their parents by the fingers, men who once helped me raise the frame. Winter airs are the best for goodbyes. They keep people close to the kettle. When Rafi heard, he puffed up like a pigeon. "Open house is for buyers, sir," he said. "Then call it a soft open for history," I told him. "People sell a lot of things in front of witnesses. You should try it." He couldn't say no without looking like the villain in somebody else's story. Mikhail liked the idea of content with elders and nostalgia and viral tears. He made a flyer with a drone photo that looked like the house was about to fly away. Maybe it already had. I spent the days before polishing what mattered and unpolishing what didn't. I found the old pencil ladder of Mikhail's heights and rubbed it gently with a damp cloth until the dates deepened. I took down the professional staging, the 2 white throw, the 2 round fruit, the nonsense books with gilded spines that never had a word inside them worth keeping. I brought out real objects. Syra's dented teapot, a wooden mallet burnished by 1,000 gentle knocks, the little wooden cow I carved for my daughter when she cut her first tooth. I placed them where the light would find them. Truth, like wood grain, shows best at a slant. At the same time, I visited 3 suppliers who had extended Rafi credit on his flips. I didn't ask them for favors. I asked them for the courtesy of precision. "If Baig says he needs trim and tiles for my old place in a hurry," I told them, "sell him the exact thing he orders. Nothing extra. No rush discounts. They smirked. He was known for showing up with big talk and late payments. The thing about speed is it trips on exactness. If you can't pad a job with fluff, you must land on the nailhead every time. Rafi's thumb already trembled. Now, the leverage. An investor. I had noticed the paper-handed man taking photographs of details he didn't understand. Men like that live a myth of inadequacy. Whisper to them that someone else knows something they don't, and they'll run to catch up. I found him through Rafi's own posts. He wanted everyone to know this sale was epic. I invited the investor for tea the day before our farewell. No pitches, I promised. Only an old man and a story. We sat in the kitchen while the last light moved down the tile like a tide. I poured from Cyrus' pot and told him the truth. Which walls I doubled because the neighbors played music too loud then. Which joists I sistered after a storm. Where the winter draft lived in the back hallway and how a rolled rug cured it better than any sealant. I said the words, craft and patience, and watched his mouth twist as if I'd said delay and expense. When he grunted about flipping and spraying, I shrugged and told him, "A spring job, you say? Then you want to keep buyers away from water stains." I slid him a sawn-off bit of plaster marked with an old leak. His eyes widened. Private knowledge, he thought. A secret edge. I smiled into my tea. I had just sold him honesty, and he mistook it for an angle. The farewell afternoon came gray and forgiving. The house warmed for company, the radiators thumping softly like hands on a drum. Neighbors filled the rooms with their feet and their breath. Rafi set out pastries and lined up brochures in militant rows, like he could feed a story into a funnel, and it would come out compliant on the other side. Mikhail paced with his camera, capturing wrinkles and nods, crafting captions in his head. My grandfather's house taught me, home is a verb, while not hearing a word spoken. I cut ribbons of apple and set them on plates, then handed one to the investor when he drifted in like a moth to a reading lamp. "Sit," I said. "This old window keeps heat better than it admits." The window was one I built with a pocketed sash. On humid days it sings. Today it hummed. One by one, people stood and told small truths that made larger ones. How my steps never squeaked because I set them with glue and screws, not nails. How the front porch felt safe in storms because the posts were anchored to proper footings, not cosmetic blocks. How Sarah used to hand out bowls of sweet rice through that very door when new babies came home. The house, hearing its life recited, relaxed. You can feel a building ease up if you've ever tuned a guitar and known the exact second the string settles into perfect pitch. Rafi's brochure stack slumped. Mikhail kept filming and laughing too loud at things that weren't jokes. In the kitchen, I lifted the pantry door off its hinges and leaned it on the table. "Bring your stories," I had written on the poster. Here they were, drawn in pencil. Little Mikhail at 3, knees dirty. At 7, proud gaps where teeth would be. At 12, lines wobbly from a growth spurt. People touched the marks and made a sound I'd know from funerals. Rafi stepped forward, uncomfortable. Let's keep the flow moving to the living room," he said, as if grief obeys event plans. "Leave it," I said. "This is the truest wall I owned." I told a joke about the one time I cut a miter wrong by a hair and lived with that hair for 10 years, and no one noticed but me. They laughed, and I shook my head. "A house remembers who fixes what he breaks," I said. My voice didn't have to be loud. It was a carpenter's voice, built to carry in rooms before microphones. Midway through, I held up the door and ran a finger along a narrow strip near the bottom rail where the paint was thicker. "There's a name under here," I said. "You can't see it unless you know where to sand." Someone asked whose name. I said nothing. I had carved McCall's name there the day he helped me hang the door the first time. I planned to show him when he earned it. Here's a truth I did not tell until then. Last spring, I had put the deed in Mikhail's name. Not to flatter him. To keep my affairs simple if my heart took the shortcut men and my family leaned toward. I told him then, when he was still making promises to try on like new shirts, it's yours if you want it, or it's yours if you've learned it. I thought the weight would sober him. I didn't calculate for a man who floats on applause. I told that part to the room, and it went quiet. I felt shame press the back of my neck, hot and plain. I had built the trap myself and pretended it was a gift. Rafi's investors looked at one another, then at the pantry door. One of them, a woman who rarely spoke, touched the thick pane where I'd said the name lay. "What happens to this door in a flip?" she asked. Rafi tapped a brochure. "We'll lighten the palette," he said. "Crisp, neutral modern buyers love clean." Clean. The word that means forget. I didn't have to argue. I only had to call for tea and open the upstairs bathroom window, a finger width. Winter air crept in. It found the spot where a hairline crack I had been meaning to fix made its favorite stain. A faint bloom appeared in the ceiling paint above the kitchen arch, as harmless as a memory, as persistent. The investor who collected secrets noticed, and, like a boy finding a spider to show his friends, beckoned the others. They gathered under the stain, murmuring. Rafi smiled too widely. "All houses whisper in winter," he chirped. "This one just sings." Then I brought down a box from the attic. "Found these when I cleared Cyrus' things," I said. Inside were Polaroids of the house half naked, beams showing like ribs. There I was, younger, standing on a ladder held by a thinner Rafi. No, not Rafi. A young man who looked like Rafi in his first job on my crew, 2 decades back, who lasted 3 days because he could not learn that scraping paint is half the job. I remembered him then. Not Rafi. Imran. He had been the type to leave early with a promise to make it up tomorrow. He did not make it up. Rafi smiled at the photos like a man trapped by handsome strangers. He expected me to call him out. I did not let the room feel the drift between men who show up and men who show off. Late afternoon thinned to early evening. I watched McCall watching the watchers. He kept glancing at his phone, waiting for approval that did not arrive in time. He took the pantry door by the sides and lifted it, as if weight could make an argument end. "It's just a door," he said, and the sentence hit the room like a dropped plate. The quiet afterward tasted like metal. It belonged to the kind of silence that changes a direction. I cleared my throat. "Tomorrow the investors will want a tour," I said pleasantly. "They'll want to talk terms in the morning and futures in the afternoon." Rafi nodded. He lived on afternoons. "I suggest we all sleep," I added. "The house has said enough for one day. Sleep is a workshop." In mine, I planed and measured again. The next day, as predicted, Rafi bounced in with 2 tile samples under his arm, and an investor trailing him. The investor started his speech about margins. I interrupted gently by carrying in the pantry door and laying it across 2 sawhorses like a body. "Before we talk numbers," I said, "I'll tell one last story." I pulled a folded bit of sandpaper from my apron and began to rub slowly at the bottom rail where my finger had paused the day before. McCall went pale. The room leaned in. The paint grew thin and then it broke, and there it was, McCall, cut with a marking knife years ago by a hand that did not shake. Not a signature exactly. A promise. McCall touched the carved letters, and his cool, curated face went messy. He closed his eyes and inhaled like a man at the door of a bakery, and for the first time since this began, I saw the boy who once tried to hide a broken toy truck under his shirt so he could fix it at home. Rafi clucked his tongue. "Sentimental value is priceless," he said too quickly, "but real value is what the market bears." "It bears weight," I agreed. "That is what value does." I put the sandpaper down. "I'll be at the tea shop," I told them. "Discuss among yourselves." The investor cleared his throat, glanced at the damp bloom, glanced at the door, glanced at Rafi's trembling thumb, and said he needed more time. Speed met friction. It squeaked. By sunset, Rafi had called me thrice. His suppliers, who once let him pad orders and pay late, were suddenly precise men with precise ledgers. His investor, who once believed in spring flips, had started to believe in autumn rentals. None of this was my doing exactly. I had only asked the world to be exact for a day. That evening I found McCall sitting on the front steps under the smoke-blue door. He had not posted anything. He was just there, in winter breathing fog. "You win, Dada," he said without looking up. "This isn't a Game Boy," I said. "It's a house." He laughed once, small and wrong. "Then teach me the rules." "I tried," I said. "You sold the book." He swallowed. The light from the porch lamp caught in his eyes like it used to when he ran back from the alley with both knees bleeding and big plans for more pain. "I thought you'd stop me," he whispered. "I thought you wouldn't need me to." Our breath rose together and made no difference to the night. Confrontations don't always come as shouts across tables. Sometimes they arrive as a quiet morning when people carry their shame level, like a plank they must keep from tipping. Raffi came early, hair damp, watch flashing. "We can still do this," he said, voice too bright. "I've got a backup buyer, young couple, teachers, sweet story, great for the brand." "The brand?" I asked. "Of the neighborhood," he said, and flinched at his own choice of word. The couple arrived with knitted hats and an apologetic way of standing, like they were sorry for wanting things. They touched the wall, not the brochures. The woman saw the carved name and covered it with her palm like a blessing. "We can't afford renovations," the man said before Raffi could talk. "We can afford a sturdy place to read by a window." He turned to me. "Did you build this?" "I did," I said, "and I haven't changed my answer." Raffi's investor drifted in late, wearing the face of a man who had slept next to his calculator. He whispered to Raffi, and Raffi's mouth tightened like a knot yanked wrong. "Mr. Jacked wrong. Dar," the investor said out loud, as if he were addressing an assembly. "We may need to reconsider our timeline." He glanced at the ceiling, where the stain, set by honest winter air, had deepened a fraction enough to make men who want speed taste risk. "Spring flips are out of season." Raffi turned toward Mikhail. "Tell your grandfather to play ball," he hissed, forgetting he was guest here. He reached for the pantry door like he might lift it out of the room and carry away the problem. I put my hand on the wood first. We both felt its weight declare itself. He let go. I raised my eyes to McCall. "What do you want?" I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the couple. The woman's gloves were frayed at the tips. The man's boots had been resoled twice, I could tell by the seam. People like that keep promises because they have patched things before. "I want a chance to make this right," McCall said, the sentence hard-won, like a nail driven into hardwood. Raffi threw up his hands. "We had a contract, did we?" I said gently. "You had a plan. The world had other ideas." "You manipulated," he began, and then stopped, because a carpenter's silence is heavier than a flipper's accusation. I lifted the sandpaper again and finished what I had started the day before, not to erase, but to clean the letters. My call glowed in fresh wood. "A name under paint," I said. "A promise under polish." I looked at the couple. "If you buy, you can keep the door. If you'd rather the boy have it, I can build you another. I know a man who works cheap." I nodded at my own chest. Raffi's investor, who likes secret edges, found himself trapped between his appetite for certainty and his discomfort with public doubt. He picked certainty. "We're out," he said to Raffi, as if spitting out a seed. "Find another deal." There. The spin of plates slowed. One by one, they wobbled and stilled. Raffi splayed his fingers through his hair, watch catching light like a lure thrown into a dry river. "This is sabotage," he muttered. "No," I said. "This is a house telling the truth." The couple looked at each other, then at me. "We'll offer less than the big number," the man said. "We don't know about spring, but we can promise winter and summer for a long time. That's a lot of seasons, I said. A house likes that. Miko cleared his throat. Dada, he said, voice steady as a spirit level. If they buy, give them the door. I don't need my name to be first at everything. I put my hand on his shoulder and found bone under jacket where a boy once was. That's the first decision you've made this month that weighs right, I said. Raffi tried one last angle. This isn't legal, he began, and I held up a hand. Don't bring paperwork to a room full of stories, I said. You'll lose. We drew up, not papers, but tea. We talked terms like human beings do when they mean to live with each other's choices. I would fix the hairline crack. The couple would keep the pantry door and the pencil ladder. I would throw in a day of work to tune the windows, because winter songs can be softened. I gave McCall a job for that day. Hold the ladder and pass the screws, and keep his phone in his pocket. He nodded like a man agreeing to lift something heavy with his back and his heart. When Raffi left, he did not slam the smoke blue door. He closed it carefully because even men in a hurry show respect to an exit they might need again. I watched him go and felt a small sorrow. Men like him think the world owes them glamour. They don't see where the real shine lives, on handles polished by clean hands over years. A week passed. We worked. McCall arrived with his sleeves pushed high like he meant it. He held the ladder steady without wobble, and I climbed not because I trusted the rungs were my work, but because I trusted the boy for the length of one room and a winter morning. We didn't talk much. The house didn't need us to. It murmured the way wood does when screws find home. When we finished, I reached into my leather roll and took out the marking knife that had cut his name years ago. I held it out to him. Take it, I said. Build something you cannot sell. He looked surprised, then wary. That's what a good tool does to a man. It makes him honest for a moment. He slid it into his pocket like a passport. We shook hands with the couple under the porch light that had glowed for Sarah and would now glow for strangers who were not strangers anymore. The woman pressed her palm to the door last time and then laughed. We'll probably hang a school calendar on this, she said. If you ever visit and find a sticky note covering your name, forgive us. I waved them off. Names are not for worship, I said. They're for remembering. After they left, the house exhaled. Not relief. Acceptance. Buildings know when you've told the truth under their roofs. They stop buzzing and settle into their weight. McCall stood beside me, hands cold, breath thick. Am I out? He asked, meaning not just the house. I considered the pantry door, the pencil marks, the knife gone from my roll, the kid who laughed too loudly, the man who had held the ladder. You are in, I said, and the words tasted like a plank laid across a gap, but not the way you planned. I don't know what that means, he admitted. It means you come to the shop in spring, I said. We'll plane something old into something new. You'll sweep and sand and regret everything you rush. He made a face. You're not going to hug me, are you? Not until the glue cures, I said. We stood there a while. Snow started as a rumor, and then arrived like a decision. The smoke blue door took it like a winter coat. I reached up and stroked the paint with my thumb, feeling for bumps that tell you where stories hide under surface. The door was smooth. The stories were not. You want a final twist? Here it is. The name under the paint was not only his. If you sanded a little higher, a little to the left, where the grain runs diagonal, you'd find Sarah, cut small, the first thing I ever carved into that house. I did not show it to anyone. Some promises are not for public. Some revenge is not triumph, but restraint. I left her name buried in bright, where only I could feel it when my palm passed by in certain light. On the last evening before the couple moved in, I came alone. I walked room to room and pressed my ear to one wall, then another. I have learned the sound of departures. This one did not break me. It left a mark, sure, like a pencil line on a pantry door, but one you can look at without wincing. I closed the smoke blue door slowly. The latch caught with that particular click I cut into it years ago, a sound my body could find in sleep. I put the spare key in an envelope addressed to the new owners, set it on the sill, and turned to McCall, who had appeared on the path without filming. He carried a canvas bag. "Tools," he said. "Cheap ones. For practice." "Everything good starts cheap," I said. "Only the hands get expensive." He nodded. His eyes were red in the corners, embarrassed to be human. "Dada," he said. "I'm sorry I sold what you made." "I'm sorry I gave you something you hadn't learned yet," I said. "We will both fix it in spring." We walked away under the early dark. Behind us, the house watched us go without choosing sides. The house keeps its shape. The rest of us learn ours against it.